Welcome back to the Belonging Place, where we talk about community and connection and belonging. And today I'm looking forward to talking about a subject that I think is kind of just like floating around in the world right now. Um, and if I were to give this episode a title, I think I would call it like questions or something like that. I'm going to start with uh, a quote that I came across in my like late 20s that was really helpful for me when I was trying to like figure out a lot of things, what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, all kinds of things. And I came across this quote, and it is from Letters to a Young Poet by Rainier Rilke. And it is, this quote is found inside letter 4. And it's kind of a famous quote, but this is how it goes. Dear Sir, to be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms and like books that are written in a foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. And I really liked basically the permission that Rilke gave to sort of just like be, and maybe not ask the questions because you're not ready or you don't know how to do it, or if you do ask the questions, to sort of sit in it. The reason why I wanted to talk about this topic is I think in our society, in our politics, in the world that we're in, there's a lot of like uncertainty. There's a lot of questions that people are asking. There's a lot of people who are deconstructing things. So whether that's their family of origin, or whether that's their faith, or whether that's their politics, or whether that's what they do as a job, there seems to be a lot of like unknown. One day I was like, I think like a lot of us, I am struggling to sort of like put all the pieces together. And I was just like texting a friend, um, just like you would, just normal. And I want to share our text thread because I feel like this conversation we ended up having was really pivotal, so simple, but so pivotal in this exchange. And so this is my friend Dan. He basically just asked a question I think that we just take for granted. Like, how are you doing? He said, "How are you, friend?" And I tend to be a person who is typically optimistic, realistically optimistic, and like grateful. And I think most of my friends see me as capable and grateful and producer. And sometimes I'm just not feeling it. I'm just not feeling good. I'm not feeling productive. I'm not feeling and if I feel safe enough, if I feel like the person I can trust, I will just tell my truth. So this is how I answered. Dan said, "How are you, friend?" And I said, "I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Feeling a little unmoored. Haha. Maybe going through what they call a midlife crisis." And I remember thinking, I don't really want to call it a midlife crisis. When I've had questions when it concerns my faith, I haven't wanted to call it a faith crisis either. I was like, I'm having faith questions, or I'm having midlife questions. My friend Dan said, quote, "I love the way you describe this. Unmoored is a fantastic word, also evokes untethered, which to me is an uncomfortable yet beautifully perfect place to be, especially considering the chapter that immediately follows this one." And it was just the perfect answer for me to be able to go to stop and think about my lived experience and the lived experience that I've seen in others around me about what happens when you're in this space where you feel unmoored or untethered. And like, what happens after that? And sometimes it's not because you get the answer, and sometimes it's not because you get the job or you get the relationship. Sometimes it's just like this growth edge. And then on the other side of that, you've gained knowledge, or you've gained a skill, or you've gained resilience. I said, I needed that reframe. It is unsettling to be anchored and unmoored. I know who and whose I am, and I'm somewhat confused about who I want to be and what I want to do. So I was like basically saying to him, listen, I feel really strong in my faith and who I am and anchored in Christ, but I feel unmoored is the word I've been telling people. It's just like the perfect word for me. Basically, like I feel unsettled in like who I am and who I want to be and what I want to do. And I have a 17 plus year career and love being a therapist and love what I've done, but also just like kind of woke up and was just like, I don't know. I don't know. My friend Dan continued, and I guess if I had an alternate title for this podcast, it would be this. He said, some call this liminal space, where your certainty turns to uncertainty, groundedness turns to wispy doubt, and identity is malleable. Thank God for this kind of space and time. It is where I have unequivocally found myself. And at this point in the text thread, I just was so grateful for a friend who listened and leaned in and didn't say like, oh, you're so great. You have you have this podcast and you have this nonprofit and you have this choir and you have a job and you have a house, and didn't like, just like sat with me and listened and heard me and said, hey, I think there's a name for that, which is something that I like kind of live my life to like name things and help people name them. And so once he introduced me to the term liminal space, I of course went and looked it up and sort of marinated in this idea of like, what is a liminal space? What does it mean to like sort of sit in the questions, which leads me back to the quote by Rilke, like to live the questions and to sort of like be okay to be sitting in what some people might say is a crisis. Right after this, my friend, it was probably just like, I don't think it's a coincidence, but he got in his car and so he wasn't able to text anymore, and he sent me a voice memo. And in this voice memo, it was so powerful. He basically said, Kylee, I love you. He didn't say it that way, but he basically said, you have lived 1,000 lives. You've done more than most people have done. And like, if you died tomorrow, it will have been enough. And something about that validation, that permission, that acknowledgement was so powerful. Of course, he was like, of course you're not going to die. But like, if you did, like you have done enough. You've been enough. There was something about that allowed my soul to just sort of like rest, to sit and be like, okay. And he said, anything you do from this point forward is sort of like icing on the cake. I loved that he took the time. I love that he validated me, that he shared some reflection of my lived experience. I love that he like was interested enough in my like sorrow or in my questions or in my like discouragement even. He went on to talk about a quote by Carl Jung. And so I'm going to read a little bit about this idea. Carl Jung saw the period around midlife, so he describes it about 38 to 40 and beyond, not as a crisis, but as a necessary transition, a spiritual crisis and an individuation process marked by a profound confrontation with the inner self, the shadow, and a reevaluation of identity and meaning. He believed the first half of life is about external development and establishing a social persona, while the second half involves a deeper inner dialogue with the self to find true meaning and become who one is meant to be. And he kind of separates these things into like a spiritual crisis, a confrontation with the unconscious or the shadow, individuation, and then kind of a reevaluation of identity. And then he sort of says the life really begins at 40. And So basically, my friend Dan said, Carl Jung said the first half of your life, your first, you know, 40 years of your life, you are living in ego and you're discovering and you're learning. And the second half of your life, 40 plus, you're sort of applying and you're sort of, I would say it's the application of your learning, or it's the wisdom earned, or it's the like ability to see a bigger picture. Maybe if I were to describe it, we spend a lot of our 20s, our 30s, our teens, like looking what's like right in front of us, like go to school, do the thing, go to college, get a job, have a family. We sort of just like have a little bit of like a path that we can follow, or that's sort of like laid out in front of us, like this is the next step. At a certain point, whether you have followed that path or not, I think we get to this place where we start to look up and look around and we start to like ask big, big questions. The question isn't like, where should I live, or where should I like, what job should I take? I think the questions start to become like, am I loving enough? Am I making a difference? Is what I'm doing every day, is it meaningful? Am I providing for those that I need to provide for? Am I creating safety? Is there purpose in what I'm doing? And I think we also start to say like, what can I learn? How can I grow? What can I go see? What can I do? I think we also shift from a consumer commercialism. Maybe this isn't everybody, but I think a lot of people as they get older, they move from a like, what can I buy? How can I entertain? To again, how can I add value? How can I create purpose and meaning? And so this shift in like the first half and the second half of your life causes a lot of like um waves, questions, uncertainty. I remember like saying to some of my friends, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and I have a full career. And they would be like, really? And I would be like, yeah, the thing that I thought that I would do when I was this age, I don't want to do anymore. And I don't know what that means. I have the skills and the capability to like pivot, but it's like, I feel a little stuck in the like, but should I or shouldn't I? And sort of in these opening or closing of doors, right? And my natural tendency, I think, for most people is to just do the secure thing, right? Take the job that makes the most money, or take the job that's going to give you the most freedom, or do the thing that is going to create the most steady. And I am so grateful for friends in my life who have given me permission to sort of just be in the questions and in the liminal space. I think there's some growth edge, there's some learning, there's some growing. So if there's anybody out there who's also sort of like trying to figure out where they fit, where they belong, how to live in a world that has politics or religion or things that are out of your control, but that impact your life so um, immensely. And for my empaths out there, whew, it is a difficult world as an empath to sort of feel people's feelings at the level that they are. They're just intense emotions out there. Um, and to be able to sort of hold your own space. Um, I think like if I were to look at my life in my 40 plus years, I think that like when I was in my like when I had graduated from second college, I call it, when I got my master's, I, had a master's degree. At the time, this was in like 2010, um, and the economy, and it was really hard to find a job. Um, and I couldn't find a job to be a therapist, even though I had just graduated with my MSW. And so I took a job in a direct care. So I wanted to stay in the same like area. And so I took a job doing direct care, which is what I had done before I got my master's, at a lockdown facility. And after a year of working there, I just knew I couldn't work there anymore, physically and emotionally. Um, and I was trying to find a job, and it was near impossible. And I remember this, I'll just call this again, like this liminal space. And I was sort of desperate for, I don't know, like the security at that age. I was 30. And the idea of like moving home because I couldn't find a job and I didn't have enough money to pay rent, and was was embarrassing, but also like I wanted so desperately to like do it on my own. I look back now and like in my whole life, and I think that that is a little overrated. This idea of like defiant hyper independence. Um, but I like was trying really hard. And I couldn't find a job, and I felt like the doors were being like slammed shut. Like God was basically saying, no, 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 no. And I felt so, I don't know, I think at the time I felt like squished. Like I was funneling down into this, like, all my options were closing. I should have been able to get jobs. I was applying for jobs that I was totally capable of, and I was getting no's, and I was getting some yeses, but the pay was just like terrible, or that I would have to work on like weekends or on call. And anyway, I was trying to figure it out, and I was going to take this terrible paying job that also worked on the weekends. And I was talking to my dad, and I was crying because I was saying, Dad, what do I do? I've got a master's degree. I can't find a job. I'm just like stuck. And I remember my cute little dad, he said, you can always come home. And I remember thinking, I had these like dual emotions at the time. I was like relieved that I had a family and parents that I could. Not everybody has that. Um, and I also had that hyper defiant independence that said like, no, like, I'm gonna figure it out. Um, and it was at this time that I don't think it wasn't, I wasn't like unique. I had other friends. I had a friend who like was had gone to law schools, and he was working at a pizza, um, working delivering pizzas. Like it was just a hard time. I guess I want to describe that. It was like, if anybody's listening and they are like in this liminal space in their life, I just want you to hear me say like, no amount of me talking around it or talking afterwards is I don't think it's comforting. I just want to say that like I see you, I hear you, I feel you, and that space is hard regardless. But I was sitting there in this liminal space trying to make decisions like, do I sacrifice values to take, just like, am I desperate to take any job at this point, and or do I move home and give myself some space and some time? All the options just seemed like they were bad options. And I was introduced by a friend of mine to a wilderness therapy program called Anasazi, and I didn't really know much about it. I had heard a little bit about it living in Arizona and going to school at ASU. And they only had a part-time summer job. So I just literally was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can survive on a part-time summer job. But it seemed like it was a window that I needed to crawl through. And that's how it felt like at the time. It wasn't even a door, but like I felt like all the doors had been closed, and funneled me into this window. And so I clawed my way through this window, and I took a job. I am sharing this story because that job, that opportunity was life-changing for me. When we talk about on this podcast pivotal moments, or when we talk about opportunities to become a part of a well or to become a part of a belonging place, this window that I climbed through ended up being life-changing. I met one of my best friends still to this day, Hillary. Love you, Hillary. Um, I learned about the Arbinger Institute, which I still to this day such a fan of. I learned all kinds of skills on the trail. I learned all kinds of principles. I turned that part-time summer job with the help of people at Anasazi, but I sort of clawed my way into doing outcome measures and doing various things. And then when there was finally a full-time therapist position, I was blessed to take that position and ended up working at Anasazi for almost 4 years. I'm sharing this story not because it's like, oh, look at me, but because now when I am in this liminal space, this what people would call midlife crisis or questions, trying to figure out who I want to be again, I distinctly remember that window that I crawled through in my life. And I think that life isn't made of big opportunities and big open doors and big, yes, you should do that. And maybe there's some people that they are lucky enough to know the right people and the doors open for them. But I think the majority of us, we're crawling through windows. I think we are desperately praying and reaching and marinating and sitting in our questions. We are going from one liminal space to the next liminal space in our lives. And we're trying our very best to sort of like look around and look up and reach out and connect and figure out what to call the thing that we're doing that we don't really know how to do it. And our parents didn't really know how to do it before us and their parents before them. And we're trying to teach those our kids. And I guess I wanted to talk today about like this is its own belonging place, the place where you don't know what you want to do, or the place where you don't know where you're going to go, or you don't know, you don't have the answers for your kids about why the world is the way that it is, or um, you don't know what to do when the thing that you believed in, your faith or your marriage or whatever, is falling apart. Um, you're not alone. And I like want to just share a message of love, and I want to share a message of hope, but more than anything, I want to share the message that Dan gave me, which is just like, it's okay to be there. It's okay to like sit in that space. It's okay to use words like unmoored or untethered. It's okay to like sit in a liminal space where where your certainty turns uncertainty and your groundlessness turns to wispy doubt and identity is malleable. I love that he said, thank God for this kind of space and time. It is where I have unequivocally found myself. And I think that is the message that I want to share. Like there's a place and a thing and a becoming in the middle of the mess of our like trying to figure out who we are. I don't have any like big answers to that question. I'm currently swimming in my own liminal space. I'm currently like trying to gather data and information, and I'm trying to like sort of figure out you know, what I need to hold on to, what I need to let go of. For about 18 months, I studied Buddhism, and the theme of that I came out was that there's like this letting go. Part of sitting in a liminal space is letting go. It's letting go of what you thought you would have or wanted. It's letting go of the preconceived notions of where you should be or how you should be. It's letting go of and or feeling your grief about that. It's allowing new ideas and new people, and maybe the same people, but giving them different opportunities. Um, and my hope is that in our vulnerability and in our belonging and in our liminal spaces, we can find those that are also sort of marinating, and we can give them permission to just be. Um, I want to invite anybody who's listening to be like my friend Dan. Ask people how they're doing and give them the opportunity to tell how they really feel. And then sit in that space with them. Maybe if you can name it, maybe if you can add value or thoughts to it, great. Um, and then, even more than that, pick up some kind of way to, with your voice, tell them what they mean to you. We have so many things in our society nowadays. We have Marco Polo, we have voice notes, we have call on the phone, we have email, though I think using your voice, we have FaceTime, we have WhatsApp, we have, you name it, we have our social media. I think more people than you know are sort of desperate to hear about how they're making a difference. Um, Pick a friend or 5 friends in your life or family members and just tell them. Tell them that you love them. Tell them that they matter. Tell them that what they're doing and that what you see them doing is remarkable, because it is. Tell them that you're going to be there for them, whether they're doing well or whether they're messy or whether they are grateful or ungrateful. Let them know that how they mean to you. It's remarkable. It's an amazing feeling for somebody to tell you that you matter. Um, and you do. You matter. And I hope that as people are sort of figuring out, when they're in their liminal space, when they're in their places of questioning, my hope is always that they will find soft places to land, open hearts, people that will allow them to just be in their becoming and not so worried about them being in their arrival. Um, I also just want to say thank you to all the people that have been on the podcast and those who are going to be on the podcast in the future, for letting me capture their becoming. I think what a gift it is to sort of sit with people and talk to them and hear their stories. I'm grateful for what we've been doing here at the Belonging Place, and I wish you all the best.